Morris Mizolowski is a futurist, which means without using a DeLorean, he reckons he can accurately predict what Australia's future will kinda sorta look like.
Welcome to this podcast. My name is Morris Mizolowski. I'm a global business futurist and media commentator. I've just returned for the most glorious 7-day journey deep into the heart of Israel's Silicon Valley, leading a trade mission of 22 like-minded people, each of us keen to explore over the bleeding edge, each of us looking to understand what innovation is, and importantly, what's out there that we don't yet know about that's going to make a huge impact on business, society, and humanity. So the next 30 minutes is all about our findings, the people that we met, the places we went, and what we learned. But if I can shortcut it, or perhaps preempt what's in most of this conversation, are really approaching innovation from the wrong angle. It's not a one-off activity. It is a cultural norm that's deep embedded within a society in this case, or within an organisation for most of us. I've been in Israel now for the best part of 10 days. For the last 7 days, I've led a trade mission of business women and men from Australia around Tel Aviv's start-up and scale-up nation and around Jerusalem, Israel, trying to understand what it is about this country that positions it after only 70 years of existence, with a population of just 8 million people, into one of the top 5 Silicon Valleys on the planet. A country that boasts 700 startups per year, that has 350 of the top 500 multinational corporations having offices and research and development in Israel. A country that's given us technology that you and I use every day. Every Intel chip, for instance, was born and is bred out of Israel. Mobileye was sold over $15 billion just a short time ago. And that will form the basis for autonomy, our vehicles and our lives as we move forward. Truly, when you look at most of the technology and innovation on this planet, it has some kind of DNA attached to this holy land. This was not a political or a religious journey. This was purely about business. And it was extraordinary, the access that we had, the people that we met, the companies we saw, and the understanding that we got from being in this holy land, holy from a technology viewpoint. In front of you, you see the vista of old Jerusalem, but that's where our journey ended, not where it began. 7 days ago, 22 of us, complete strangers, met together to start our journey into Tel Aviv's startup nation. As they told us over and over again, Tel Aviv's startup sector is literally 1 kilometre wide and deep. There are other startup sectors around Australia, but Tel Aviv is one of the major ones. It boasts an incredible array of new companies, old companies, wonderful innovation, incredible accelerators, incredible incubators. And our very first morning, our very first visit was to Launching Pad Australia. It is an Australian initiative set up in Tel Aviv to help to introduce businesses and individuals to this enormous landscape, this diverse landscape, which at first glance, I promise you, makes no sense whatsoever. Language barrier is not really the issue because most, if not everyone here, speaks or understands English. It is really understanding the complexity with which business is done here. The very first thing that we were told by our Launching Pad representative was that Israel's motto is start fast and slowly get faster. Start fast and slowly get faster. We thought this was a wonderful glib statement. We thought it was an incredible thing to hear. But really, how could it apply itself to us? The reality is we were only going to begin to understand how this was going to play a part in our lives. We spent the next day exploring the technologies of Tel Aviv. We looked at the world from various eyes, from different people's perspectives. We met startups, we met incubator players, we met the technologists, and incredibly we got inside their brains and their minds as they willingly shared with us what it is they were doing, why they were doing it, and how they did it. And that's the incredible thing that we learnt very quickly about Israel. That even though all of them are seeking IP, even though all of them have a secret they're not willing to share, there is much that they will tell you, and tell us they did. Everybody was openly willing to share. From our startup nation, going from SOSA, which was our landing pad, and if you come to Israel and need an introduction to Israel, of course I'm happy to provide that to you, but so will Launching Pad, just reach out. It's Omri Vislitsky, who is our person on the ground there. We then went to Microsoft to hear about how Microsoft is tapping into this incredible nation. It has been here for many years, it has offices and R&D here, but specifically in the last few months they have opened up an incubator that allows people that use the Microsoft platform to engage themselves with Microsoft employees and the office, and to use it as a base for free as they develop up their next Microsoft specific product. Incredible. Of course there's a bottom line for Microsoft here. We got that. But it is the willingness and the ability for Microsoft to be able to assist these startups to leapfrog from where they are to where they all need to be. And that again is part of what we saw in this wonderful nation. The ability to understand that even though there is proprietary, even though there is a need for us to basically get ahead of the next person, there is really one way to do that well, and that is to do it collectively. It is to understand that the help, the assistance, the inroads, the introductions, the network that we offer to somebody else is exactly what we get back in return. And that's not a philosophical conversation. It truly is a business model that they use here, because everybody in that square kilometre knows everybody else in that square kilometre. Your reputation is what precedes you here. Failure is not what you're measured by. In fact, more often than not, you are expected to have a few failures under your belt. It was a concept that was difficult for us to understand, and as recently as last night at our farewell dinner, we were still grappling with it. I posed the thought to our group, as one of my final thoughts to them, that the reality is that the word failure is what hinders us. It's the negative connotation that it is a dead end, that from that we cannot return. And it's certainly how we see things in Australia. But in Israel, the word really means that we have reached a conclusion that what we have done, what we thought was right, with all the resources we used to bring it to fruition, just wasn't going to cut it. In this instance, it was better to terminate the idea, to walk away from it, to take our lessons, pack them up, and then look for another application to apply them to. And that's what failure means here. It's not that we laud people for making a mistake, for burning cash, for doing the wrong thing. It is that the lessons have been learned, that we are willing to get up, to dust ourselves off, and then to move forward, having learnt them into the next incarnation of who it is and what we want to invest and invent. The reality is that that is what happens here all the time. And as Sunday grew to a close 7 days ago, we moved on to a briefing at Magma Venture Partners to hear exactly that, how they have been able to gather together a group of impressive and incredible companies that they fund, and that together they are able to collectively move those companies forward in a way that the individual companies could not. Monday, 6 days ago, came and saw us touring Tel Aviv University, an incredible campus, 1 kilometre wide, yes, exactly the same width and length as the startup nation's Tel Aviv space. We heard about how the university is partnering, but not in the sense that Australia does it, truly partnering with innovators and with students and with corporations, with the global world. How they are able to take their students, their brilliant students, and in the midst of their course and their learning, to attach them to real-world projects, the ideas that they have inside of them, and to foster them in an incubator space, to attach them to the best of thinking in a multidisciplinary way across the university, and then to help them to commercialise that idea into a reality that could see Facebook, Google or any of the other Fortune 500, Fortune companies come knocking on their door. And they have a specific department whose role it is to do exactly that. And their role is to connect their students with the real world. This isn't some pie-in-the-sky academic program. This is a real business incubator from which many multi-billion-dollar companies have been spawned. Taking an idea from a student, allowing that student to work collectively with the resources of the university, and then the university helping them to gain the contacts and the laser focus that they need to be able to bring their ideas, their products to fruition and to the market. We moved on to TAU, TAU Partners, which is that body. It is an internal body from the university, whose sole purpose it is, with a huge fund to do it in the realms of $20 to $30 million, specifically just to foster those relationships, and how they went about doing it. We then moved on to a company called Green Soil, who is a specialist in the agri space, who is looking for investment companies that work around feeding the nation, growing food, and generally looking after the land, to see some of the most incredible startups and their products. We saw, for instance, a 1/2 metre spike that literally is drilled into the ground by hand, requires no great machination whatsoever. And once it's screwed into the soil, into the farmland, it will, with the press of a button, attach itself to a satellite and begin to send real-time messages to the farmer and to the ecosystem about the land, about the roots, about the soil, about watering, about fertilisation and a myriad of other things, and in real time continue to feed information to the farmer that makes her and his life far easier and more appreciative of what to do in empirical sense. In other words, not just guessing, not just believing, but actually knowing by the numbers what it is that has to be done. And our last stop for the day on that Monday was at EcoWaves, to see wave technology actually come to fruition in the form of making energy, and to see the prototype of the product on the shores of Israel that is now being sold around the world, that allows countries and corporations to gain their energy simply from the ready resource of waves of the ocean. The world then moved on for us, and we began our next day, Tuesday, exploring a company called Albert and Cyberbit. Most incredible space. These two spaces are a space that allowed us to see an insight into the world that you and I most probably will never have access to, already access to. It exists inside the Israeli aerospace industry. And any morning that starts with armed guards coming onto your bus to put stickers over your cameras on the phone, that then escorted you into the building and put you into a boardroom you knew was going to be a most incredible opportunity to see things that you don't get to see. We were exposed to what the Israeli army is doing, what they are looking at, and what the future of military might be. But more importantly, this was not a conversation about army, but a conversation about the way that the Australian government and others play into that space. It was a conversation about the way that they are providing not only missiles for army, but also unmanned vehicles, satellites, space station equipment, and how Australia is one of their major partners. We went on into the hangars to see aircrafts being built, and to see unmanned autonomous vehicles being built and being deployed. A most incredible opportunity. One that allowed us to see literally behind the hangar door. We then moved on to IHLS, an opportunity to visit with startups that specifically looks at the nature of military and air force and around defence, that is specifically looking to bring together startups around that notion. an opportunity to see how a company started itself and its life as a media company by putting out 4 articles a day around the notion of defence and technology, that gathered a database of people interested in those articles and then quickly put together a conference based on those topics and the people that were interested in them. They then used that conference to be able to introduce the players in that space to tomorrow's technology startups. And from that has spawned a multi-million-dollar business. We got to see and hear from firsthand some of the startups in that space and the incredible technologies that they are innovating and inventing, and the ways that they are commercialising those products, which are not solely and often not at all being used for military purposes, but more for commercial reality. At Albert, our next stop, we got to see the most incredible experience of technology. Albert and Cyberbit provides most of the technology around the globe, including for Australia, most of the technology to our armed forces, police and security. If you've watched a spy movie, if you've seen James Bond, if you've seen any of those opportunities where they use technology to be able to spy on people, both globally, regionally and locally, it often is technology that Albert has provided. They showed us suitcases that can be taken into a cafe, a literal briefcase, and when you open it, it deploys itself, being able to hear everybody in that cafe and also being able to spy on all of the phones in that space. They showed us and told us about the technology being used by governments, by CIA and other forces to be able to eavesdrop on those who mean us harm, how they do that, and swiftly how they're able to gain information using artificial intelligence and other means to be able to build a story of who intends to do what, where and how and with what. Really, again, a most incredible presentation, one that would be difficult to gain access to, but it gave our cohort, it gave the 23 of us a most incredible insight into the world of espionage, and more importantly, how the cybersecurity, how our own notion of trust and reputation is going to be so important in tomorrow's landscape. It is in fact one of the technologies that I think we all need to be looking at in a far deeper way. It's one of those technologies that I believe will be riding on our planet over the next 5 to 10 years. That Tuesday night finished up at the Australian Ambassador's residence. Ambassador Chris Kanan introduced us to his world and why it is that Israel and Australia have forged such strong and deep relationships, and why technology has been such a part of that. The world ahead, it really is incredible. Wednesday morning dawned for us, and we began the journey of mobility, Internet of Technology, artificial and big data were on our radar. We started at Axelon. Axelon provides software for intelligent transportation. And what this company does, amongst a myriad of other things, its newest incarnation, has the ability to tap in to the transport system, the lights and the grids of a city, of course with its permission, and to change the traffic signals. What it does is to ensure that the buses and the trams never stop at a red light, the traffic is never congested, that everybody has equal and ready access to the roads in a way that is most meaningful to the people using those roads at that moment, at that time. Phenomenal technology being rolled out in Israel at the moment. And just as we thought we could be no more impressed by how he was doing it, the savings that were involved, in Jerusalem where we are at the moment, for instance, they have been able to take an average journey time of about 80 minutes down to 42 minutes. And they've also been able to increase patronage by 400% and sell off 10 trams at a price of $60 million each. Not only did they sell it into Israel, which was incredible enough, and of course we would think where they should be selling it, their technology works so well that they have sold it into the New York system. And as we speak, they are currently rolling it out on Fifth Avenue with a view and a tender then to be able to roll it out across New York, to untangle all of its roads. And he let us into a secret, that this is just the beginning. that in fact they're able now, and they're having conversations with many countries around the world, to be able to alter irrevocably the way our roads are used for mass transport and eventually for pedestrians and cars as well. The next day saw us going in to look into Jerusalem, moving away from Tel Aviv to explore the notion of health and medicine. We started our day at Alyn, A-L-Y-N, Pediatric Hospital, the most incredible hospital looking after children with acute needs that can't be satisfied anywhere else in Israel or on the planet. These children require one-off bespoke solutions, and the solutions there not only come from the great nurses and doctors and the medical teams in general, but also from innovation, where they have a team of engineers and handy people who literally have a basement full of the most incredible, ordinary, perhaps drills and other things that might be used in any handyman's office. And with those, they're able to make one-off bespoke solutions for every single child in the hospital. Unlike Australia or elsewhere in the world, their first requirement is not for OH&S. It's not to make sure that they can get a patent, or that in fact this thing might be or might not be useful or purposeful for any other purpose. Their one and only mandate is how quickly can they provide that piece of technology to the child in need. It might be something as simple as a device to help them get dressed, a device to help them eat, something that might allow them to give them some sense of mobility or freedom, to shower for themselves. Whether that be an app, a piece of rigid technology, or simply some wood that's nailed together with some kind of mechanism, it doesn't matter. In a trilogy between the hospital, the medical staff, and the handy or engineering staff, they will find a solution for each and every child. We then moved on to Hadassah Hospital to hear about how technology is being used in a much broader sense. Hadassah Hospital is a hospital that is world-renowned. It is the hospital that has given us many of the pharmaceuticals, many of the tablets that you and I now readily take, and holds the patents on many of them. They've started up a new enterprise, an enterprise that allows them to take an incubator approach. This biomed that they have started and wish to seed around the world is an opportunity for people that are interested in innovating in health to work physically on premises. They have put together what is or could be anywhere else a normal startup space, complete with offices, all of the resources, people and technology that biomed innovators might need. The big difference is that it provides them the ready connection to all of the great researchers, hospitals and doctors that they will need to be able to progress, and gives them that access in a meaningful and purposeful way. Hadassah Hospital also has a fund or a number of funds that they use to be able to seed these companies with, to be able to take them on the adventure or the venture from literally that embryonic startup through to full global commercialization. It's a most magnificent model. It starts from altruism, from hoping to cure or tame some of the diseases and issues that we have as human beings, but then says that rather than requiring philanthropy or goodwill to be the only basis for income, that we can in fact partner with those companies, with those individuals, with those startups and scale-ups, and from that providing them their expertise, their doctors, their physical premises, and the insights and foresights that they have from doing this, they can then, by forming the relationships, the partnerships, by doing all of the steps or assisting the steps to commercialization, they can receive income ongoing in perpetuity. A most magnificent, elegant solution, and one that I think in Australia we need to look at more and more. We too often work in a divorced space. We too often see ourselves working in isolation, and we might occasionally go out and look for some assistance or some help. In Israel, they have the complete opposite. They understand and have the desire for each and every person to have their startup, to be the next unicorn, the next billion-dollar provider of whatever it is that they are doing. Let's not for a moment kid ourselves that this is not anything but a commercial enterprise. But the reality for them is that doing it collectively, by tapping into an ecosystem, by every single person being readily available to assist someone else, that they can start fast and slowly go faster. It is something that until you experience seems foreign. It just doesn't make sense because it goes against everything that we are taught in our modern business practices. But yet it works so elegantly here, and we have seen billions of dollars worth of examples of where that is the reality. We have seen how 350 multinationals indeed have bases, R&D departments here. How much of the global startup set-up nation looks to Israel, amongst other places, to gain its insights and its ideas. It is where research is being constantly done for corporations around the planet, for the things that you and I now readily use, without the foresight or the understanding that this is often where it begins. As I said to you, this was never, ever meant to be a tour that proffers Israel as the only place. It was, and as it turned out to be for all of us, an opportunity to understand in a small ecosystem that is, with the right context, readily accessible, where you can, in a square kilometre, go deep to understand why it is, again, a country with such small resources, natural resources, that is a population of 8 million, that fights geopolitical wars on all of its borders, that by every measure on the planet just should not be so technologically advanced, is. And again, when you look at the technologies that you and I use, how many of them have their DNA in Israel. It's this reality that brought us to this landscape. And as we said farewell to each other last night, after 7 days of physical hands-on journey through Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, in and out of the doors of VC capitalists, incubators, in and out of universities, in and out of hospitals, looking at social entrepreneurship, speaking to politicians and so many others, the theme was consistent. It was start fast and slowly go faster. Work as an ecosystem, tap into others, do what you do with the passion. Understand that failure is not a stark word, that what it is lessons learned, and that what we do wrong after failure is that we see it as a dead end, that we need to continue to innovate for ourselves and for our country, and that it can be done and is being done, that resource or apparent resource is not the issue. When I put together this tour, my underlying requirement for those assisting was that we explore deeply why. Because the how story is told often. The names of the apps, the things that they do, are devices and information that we readily get. What I wanted our delegates to understand was why it's being done. Because if we understand why, we can begin to explore the how, what, where and when. If we know why we're doing it, if we push back to the human behind all of this, to understand what's the trigger, why will this technology work, why is it likely to be the next big thing? Today more than ever, it is about the human element, not the technology. We're moving into an autonomous phase where technology will take over from humans. It will start to do some of our basic grunt thinking. It will assemble and amass information that it thinks is relevant to its human owner. It will begin to think, or basic thinking, for us and present us with a series of options from which to choose. Those technologies are the ones that are beginning to ride here. Tomorrow's great technologies are around the human factor. They are around cybersecurity. They are around longevity. Given that we will live to 100 or 120, how will we do that? How will we ensure that our digital and physical spaces are safe for each other? How will we provide evidence of reputation? They're the things that we explored, and they're the trends that I'm confident are the things that we're going to see the next billion-dollar unicorns in Israel and around the world as we resolve the hows for those whys that we already know. I want to thank you for coming on this journey. If you want to read more about my daily adventures, go to businessfuturist.me and you'll find a day-to-day log there of the places we went. These tours are an annual activity for me. If you'd love to join me on the next one, drop me a line to Morris, M-O-R-R-I-S, at businessfuturist.com. Find me online in a myriad of spaces. If you'd like me to take your corporation into this space to provide you with the insights that we've found specific to your needs, regardless of whether that's agri-tech, FinTech, insurance tech, any of the other techs. Again, track me down. I'd love to be your guide into this most incredible incubator space, this startup, scale-up nation called Israel. Thank you for listening over the last half hour. I hope that you found most of this or all of this interesting. Would love your comments and thoughts. Again, always happy to catch up, always happy to have a conversation or a chat. Until we meet again sometime in the near future, may all your activities, may everything that you wish for yourself come true. Have a great day. Over and out.
Morris Mizalowski is a futurist, which means without using a DeLorean, he reckons he can accurately predict what Australia's future will sorta look like.
Great Scott!
And if you like being alive, it's great news for you.
Each and every one of you is indeed a futurist.
Expo 2009, but within that expo is Store of the Future, basically. So 2020 is Store of the Future. And with me is Morris Mizalowski. I got it right this morning. Good morning, Morris.
Morning, Morris.
Now, Morris is what they call a futurist. I mean, and
future, in fact, we think that 60% of us will be doing jobs that don't exist now.
I think we're doing tasks that don't exist now. We're seeing huge industries rise. So
You knew the answer anyway, they'll ask you a question anyway. Were you surprised that we feel as though we're not being burdened by technology?
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I knew the result.
Report today is saying extend school hours to 5:30 and sort of in that difference between when kids finish now and 5:30.
That other Australian industries face job cuts. Should any sectors in particular be concerned?
I think most sectors nowadays need to be concerned. We're really going through a seismic shift across the entire planet. And
talking about the fact that older people and cars and driving aren't necessarily a good mix. So do we really want people in their hundreds driving on our highways?
hey, remember I'm talking about the future.
Yeah.
We're into this semi-driverless car stage by then. And in fact, what we want are less people behind the wheel. We want more people moving around as they want, but the car's doing most of the thinking. So in fact, in